9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi, I'm Tim Robinson, Editor-in-Chief of Aerospace, and with me is Deputy Editor Steve Bridgewater.
Hi, guys.
And returning Features Editor Bella Richards, back from maternity leave. Welcome back, Bella.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's good to have you back.
Good to have you back.
It is.
Welcome to Aerospace NOTAM, another edition of our podcast looking at global aviation, aerospace and space news and what we have upcoming in the latest issue of Aerospace, October 2025. Where does the time go, eh? In the magazine, we cover from everything from GA to spaceflight, from airliners to airports, from air law to eVTOLs. We're going to kick off with our usual round robin thing. Where we've been in the past month. Shall I lead off?
Yeah, you go first.
The previous week? It was DSEI in London in the Docklands. So the big arms fair, defence exhibition. Lots of interesting stuff going on there. It's kind of a big theme from that was countering drones. Counter drone stuff, low cost, kind of rebuilding maths, really.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff. There was also some updates on GCAP and new RAF Chief of the Air Staff, Harv Smith, there kind of laying out his priorities, which were rebuilding the RAF's nuclear mission, air and missile defence, and space. So all in all, very, very busy week. Lots of stuff happening, lots of news going on, and incredible to see some of the innovation that was there.
Yeah. And if you want to see everything that happened, head over to Tim's X account because there was no stone left unturned.
No, and we've also got the blog up now as well, haven't we? So if you look for our twice weekly insight blog, Rearming for the Future is up there, free of charge for everybody. Whether you're a member or not, you can read that blog and find all Tim's news from DSEI.
Yep, it's all there. Steve, how about you? You've been historic stuff?
I went back in time, yeah. It was Duxford's big airshow weekend in September, so Battle of Britain 85th anniversary. We're used to Duxford putting up big formations of Spitfires, and they did just that. I think there were 16 up this year. But what we've not had before is a big formation of Hurricanes. We had on the Saturday 8 Hawker Hurricanes. Biggest gathering, we think, since the 1950s when the Portuguese Air Force retired theirs. Certainly in the modern era. We've seen 7 before at Shuttleworth a few years ago, and to get 8 was fantastic. So it was a really good event. Good mix of aircraft there, everything through to Vampire and F-86 Sabre. It was really windy, so a lot of the early stuff didn't fly, unfortunately. So that's the last big air show of the year now in the UK for me. I've got a small event at Shuttleworth there, race day in October, and potentially one more Duxford show as well. But so going out on a high, really, for this year.
And also the thing with the Hurricanes as well, that the big wing of the Hurricanes, somebody put it out, said when you see a load of Spitfires and a Balboa at Duxford, they've all got different paint schemes. There's some in PR blue, there's some in desert, whereas all the Hurricanes are all in Battle of Britain.
I remember back in showing my age now, 1990, when Stephen Gray had the Hurricane restored, and all of a sudden we'd got 3 Hurricanes in the UK. The Battle of Britain Memorial Flight 2 and G Hurry for the fighter collection. And there we are now with 8 flying. We could have had 9. Shuttleworth Collections aircraft was unserviceable, and then the 2 from the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight would have made 11 as well. So how we've moved on in the time since 1990, a lot of that down through to Tony Ditheridge and his plans and extruding the metal to make the spars to get these aircraft back in the air.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose we better ask what have you been up to, Bella? Do you want to fill in all our listeners and what you've been doing for the last year?
Yeah, I guess it's safe to say, I'm sure the listeners would know, I definitely have not been at any exciting air shows or aerospace events, unfortunately. But fortunately, I've been home with my daughter, who is almost 1 year old, which is very cool because the last time we recorded this with me in it,
You were about to go off on maternity leave, weren't you?
So time goes very quickly. So I've just been on maternity leave, I guess. I haven't been anywhere, but I'm back.
And pleased to see us, as
Yes.
we are pleased to see you.
Definitely. Yeah, but
Cool, right. And the final thing that I went to last week was RAS Amy Johnson lecture, obviously celebrating women in aviation. And that was given by Smitri Hamel, who is a licensed aircraft engineer. She is the first female engineer, first female aircraft engineer from Nepal.
Wow.
Really interesting. And Amy Johnson was the first British female licensed engineer. Really interesting story about what got her into aerospace in the first place. Also doing upgrades. I mean, talk about remote working. She was doing upgrades on avionics upgrades on the Falkland Islands, British Norman Islander in the Falkland Islands. So imagine being that far away from sort of support or somebody to actually sort of chat. So a really good lecture, really good panel discussion afterwards as well on women in aviation, MRO, role models, things like that. And there's some really keen people there. So it was really really exciting to see. Great event that was.
And great to see a focus on somebody who isn't a pilot. We keep saying there are so many other career options in our industry that everybody thinks of pilot being the top one, but so many other options.
Well, we've got our careers fair coming up in November, so get your book your places for that. So right, we're on to the news roundup. So what have caught our eyes in the news this month? Shall I?
Yeah, you go first.
So, one of the big stories, and it's been over this weekend as well, a little bit of an update, is Russian drones landing in Poland. This was about 20 drones that were, kind of one-way attack drones on their way to Ukraine, and about 20 of them ended up in Poland. There was a scramble. They were intercepted by Polish Air Force and I think there was the Dutch Air Force of F-35s. So NATO has responded to this. They've got something now which I think is called Eastern Sentry. The RAF is flying Eurofighters, Typhoons from RAF Coningsby. They're supported by Voyager tankers as sort of combat air patrols over eastern Poland to make sure this doesn't happen again. It's a real, one or two of these drones have kind of gone off over borders. 20 is a bit more than that, and it's all part of the Russians' grey zone warfare, provocations, probing, see what they can do. And then on, I think it was Friday, we had another incident where there were 3 MiG-31 Foxhounds that went into Estonian airspace. And I think they were on the way to Kaliningrad, and they were orbiting for 12 minutes in Estonian airspace. They were armed as well.
Not according to the Russians, though. Apparently, nothing happened at all.
Until they were chased up. I think that this was Italian F-35s at this time. So. Again, this is really kind of part of the stuff that I mean, you could see that this news of the Russian drones broke during DSER week, and from the counter drone equipment that was there, the interceptors, the mass, that was a big theme of the show, and it just hammered it home really about this is a new threat. Not that NATO or the West can't intercept these drones. We've got things like Patriot. We've got things like Sky. What's the Sky Saber? But they are expensive. To knock down a kind of like a Shahed drone. So people are now looking at how do you get these sort of interceptors in the mass. And the numbers really needed to counter these drones. It's a game of numbers, and everyone's now looking at what are the cheapest solutions. How do you do this if you're going to sustain it? So again, Russian drones landing in Poland. Steve, what about you?
I've got an airship story. For a bit of a change from drones, we're going to airships. So there's a US company called AEROS, which have developed a rather large 555-foot long, incredibly large airship, initially aimed at moving outsized cargo, so things like wind turbines or humanitarian relief aid, so it'll carry up 66 tons of aid. But they've come up with a proposal to use this as a flying warehouse. So what they're looking to do is to moor this over Los Angeles and have drones flying up to it to collect items to deliver to the city below. So,
interesting.
Yeah, that was my reaction as well. So I think we've seen all sorts of uses for airships and drones, but I think flying warehouses, floating over cities is something I didn't have on my bingo
So
card for
like a
this month.
particular company would
Yeah,
have their stock
presumably,
in
yeah.
air?
Yeah, presumably. So if you wanted immediate delivery of something, you'd send the drone up, and it would come down within minutes, presumably.
I think they're looking there. I think that the use case. I mean, we've heard a lot about like last mile or middle mile logistics, last mile logistics. So I think the idea there is possibly is how do you get around traffic jams, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
the idea that you've got ground warehouses, you've got FedEx trucks, you've got Amazon trucks and stuff like that. But maybe they're looking at that as to, well, where could you park it where the ground traffic is really, really bad, and you could get around you could have sort of like more speedy delivery that way. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, a giant 550, I've got visions here of Independence Day.
That's got and
or District 9,
and
something hovering over a
and the
city.
image they've released as well. It is a very shiny silver. Does look very much like a big UFO.
That's not going to spark any UFO reports. What about you, Bella? What have you got for us in news?
Yes. Taking it back to Russia. The Russian space industry is in critical condition, actually, according to the main kind of spacecraft manufacturer of Russia, RSC Energy. I can't tell if I say that right, but they came out, or the CEO came out and said to employees that the space industry is in critical condition, and that it would have to take a miracle to basically resuscitate it. And a specific quote he said was, "We need to stop lying to ourselves and others about the state of affairs, convincing ourselves and others that everything is fine with us." And there's a lot of moving parts involved in his statement, but a lot has come out that they've been struggling to pay their employees. Apparently, I remember seeing a Telegram post that employees haven't been paid since like March.
Wow.
Or something ridiculous like that. Debt levels, obviously everything to do with the war. They just don't have the funds to keep, I guess, not keep going, but keep up with where they were before, of course, because they are directing their funds into more important matters, I guess. And I think this news is quite big because, like most, big organizations, especially that are to do with the government, they'll never kind of admit when something's in, dire condition, I guess. And especially Russia, that even with, they've still kind of maintained this, they've maintained that they are doing well, I guess, even though the whole world knows that they're not, especially within space. And so this felt like quite a significant time when they admitted to the public. Well, it got out.
Somebody's gone against the propaganda, haven't
Exactly.
But I mean, this was an internal.
It was internal, but it got out, and I think the CEOs actually said to the public similar things, similar remarks. Anyways, it's not completely internal, and it's quite interesting because I guess what does this mean? And even Russia recently committed again to being part of the ISS until 2030, which is basically when it's going to deorbit or just before. So how they will, I guess, maintain their I guess space, not superiority, but how they'll maintain their presence in space is something to consider. And I mean, sadly, it's not news to anyone at the same time. I mean, the country scaled back the number of cargo and crew missions they would even do to the space station. So from 4 flights every 2 years now to 3 as a cost saving measure. So it's all things everyone knew, but it finally being put into words to employees feels pretty significant. So it's sad, but I guess
it's sad for space travel, but I think it's been inevitable with the sanctions that have been placed on Russia, and as you say, the amount that they're expending on the war.
So
absolutely,
yeah.
Okay.
Right, Tim.
Back to me. Okay, so I've got more drone news here. So again, going to DSCI, a big theme there was drones, and more drones, scaling up production. And we got news here of drone factories opening in the UK. There's been a flurry of news there. One of them is a Ukrainian drone maker, UK Spec Systems. They're opening a massive factory in Mildenhall, Suffolk. They're going to be production to start early next year. In addition, the British government has announced Project Octopus, talking about building interceptor drones in the UK. And then that's going to be thousands a month. Again, we're talking about scaling up mass. And we've also got Tekava, which is a Portuguese UK drone manufacturer. They're going to have a new factory in Swindon. They're providing the drone that forms part of the RF Storm Shroud. That's going to create 1,000 jobs. And we've also got wind races as well.
Yep.
So I mean, there's over the, this is just 1 month. We just had all these drone factory news.
Yeah.
So really encouraging to see, and also kind of that building up that mass, building up the combat mass, and just producing them, as many as you can.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip that story on its head. We've seen great success with the drone industry. We've seen in recent months a bit of a contraction in the eVTOL market. We've seen a number of organisations filing for Chapter 11 or going into full bankruptcy. Not quite to that stage yet, but we've got two, but the big companies have put their eVTOL programs on hold this month. So firstly, Supernal, the South Korean company, which is affiliated with Hyundai, the car company, and with great hopes that we'll be able to combine the eVTOL advanced air mobility angle with the mass production side of Hyundai cars. They have now announced suspension of the of programs, have paused their SA2 program, which was their 5-seat eVTOL. Their CEO has also stepped down as well. So a bit of uncertainty as to where the future holds with that. And also Textron have put their program on pause as well. So they're not saying they're stopping doing it. They're just pausing. So we've seen before, a lot of discussion around, is the battery technology ready? Is the infrastructure ready? Is the legislation and the licensing ready? And I think a lot of these organizations are really realizing now the answer is no. That we're not ready to do this in a number of different ways.
I mean, Hyundai as well, the backers of Superman. I mean, they've got plenty of cash, and they are in the automotive industry, so they know they've got access to economies of scale in terms of the battery tech and in production, and Textron, Bell. Rotorcraft. So these are big.
They're big companies. And this is not somebody in their back bedroom coming up with a scheme. This is the big boys going. We're struggling here. And the other thing that's come out this month is we've had the first eVTOL mid-air collision, which is actually preparing for an air show in China. Two of the Xpeng vehicles. Luckily, only one person was slightly injured, but no fatalities from it. But we're talking about this low altitude economy, lots of aircraft flying around, and obviously this was in an air show environment, so they were deliberately flying quite close to each other. But
forgive me for not fully knowing, because I've been a little off grid with aviation news, but hasn't this been somewhat of a not great year for eVTOLs? Haven't a few companies or more of startups not done so well?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen, Lilium has been...
Volocopter.
Yeah, Lilium, Volocopter. And so, those companies which are no longer... And Volocopter was in the process of being bought out by a Chinese company. There was Lilium was in the process of being bought out on 2 occasions, and it hasn't gone through just yet. So a lot of uncertainty in the market. So I guess what I'm saying, Bella, is we're no further forward than where we were a year ago when you were last here.
And I guess it's at this point exactly what you were saying, considering the infrastructure and everything it's not there yet. There's going to be those companies that kind of get filtered through because it all costs money.
Although watch this space, because we may have some news from the Dubai Air Show, won't we? Because that is where all the action is taking place. That is where all the pioneers of heading to. So
it is, and there's the regulatory environment out there. I think the thing I saw on LinkedIn interestingly recently was from the CEO of Robinson Helicopters. A lot of these eVTOL companies were talking about making the first electric eVTOL point-to-point flight, and he said, We did that with an electric helicopter a few years ago.
Mm.
It's electric vertical takeoff and landing is not as new. And so his argument is we're reinventing the wheel here when we actually have a system already. We have helicopters which do the job, and we can electrify them.
Yeah.
The race to bring out the first air taxi service. Talking of races, we've got another race going on in space, haven't we? Who's winning? Who's going to be on the moon next? Bella, you tell us.
Yeah. So, China is kind of making not its comeback, but they are in the news again, I guess, when it comes to exploring the moon. So obviously everyone knows that Artemis, the US program, returning to the moon again, in a kind of new space race era, I guess, or new lunar exploration era. But recently, so in August, China said in a statement that it had conducted vital tests for its Lanyu, I could be butchering that, but Lanyu lunar lander. And this was kind of one of the, not the first, because there's been a few things in previous months, but this felt like one of the bigger announcements that, oh, wait, there's another player in the game now, especially with the amount of delays that Artemis has faced. China kind of announcing that they've done like big tests, puts, I guess, the US's supremacy with exploring the moon again onto rocky ground, I guess. So it's pretty interesting, China's like lunar space program. So they announced in 2023 for plans that they would have humans explore the moon. So that was kind of the first time they kind of came back in the game. And then there's been things, progressing. And then, this kind of felt like the first time they've announced something a little more concrete. So their mission is 2 astronauts launching to the moon atop a Long March 10 rocket on board I'm going to probably say it badly, but a Mengzhou spacecraft. So that will rendezvous with the lander that they've just done tests with, and that lander will then complete the kind of final phase, a landing phase, and then transporting the astronauts to the surface. So that lander has completed vital tests, as I said, validating its landing and takeoff system, control system, lunar touchdown and shutdown scheme, etc. So I guess the big news as well is that there's been a bit of discourse about whether this actually is a threat technically. So there was an entire after hearing about this news, the US Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing to discuss the risks if China, I guess, defeats the Artemis program. And a former NASA administrator, Jim Brideson, or I could also be saying that name wrong, said that the US will highly unlikely beat China's program, which is a big deal saying that. Especially, the US will always defend its capabilities and I guess superiority with this. But in light of those comments, the current interim administrator kind of slashed that and was like, he said that was shade thrown on all of NASA. I heard it and I got to tell you that maybe I'm competitive. I was angry about it. I can tell you what, I'll be damned if that is the story we write. We're going to beat the Chinese to the moon.
So that sounds like a race to me. But I mean, I suppose it's important to. There's 2 things that jump out. First off, is are we comparing apples and oranges here in terms of Artemis is going for the sustained presence? It's
a lot more expanded.
It's basically. If you can do the refueling in orbit bit, which SpaceX is working on, Starship, that not only opens up the moon, but you've got potentially the rest of the sort of solar system as well. China is going for a kind of a one-off. It's Apollo 2.0, and it's just 2 people in a lander. I mean, we don't know if there's any follow-on ones. Are they going to have like an Apollo 11? Are they going to do Apollo 12 or Apollo 13? Apollo, are there other crewed missions planned? The other thing is the if China do manage to make it back to the moon, the kind of cultural impact of beating the US. I don't think it matters. I don't think that the the average person in the street will will know the difference between Artemis and what the Chinese are doing. It'll just be the Chinese have got back to the moon.
Yeah.
They won't know about the fact that Artemis is more aimed at sustained. And I think that it'd be difficult to underestimate the kind of cultural and the geopolitical power, soft power, or maybe that will give China in the same way that the US had it in the 60s. Is our system works. Our political system works, and to put some people on the fence, as this is a rising power, get behind us.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people I've been reading a lot about this, and a lot of people are also saying, who even cares? The US got there first, in a long time ago. So it's I think it is a big deal, but I guess people who maybe aren't even in the industry and just kind of watch it from afar would say, well, it doesn't matter. We got there in the 60s, so who cares? But it does matter, actually.
I think the thing with that is it's because a lot of time has passed. If you were to sort of say, if the Soviets had landed in 1975 or something, well, what's the point? But because no one's been back since, and because it seems so hard, and because we've had commercial landers there and have tried to get there, failed, etc., no one's gone back. It is more of a prestige thing.
What's it called? Flags and footprints.
It was
kind of
the US has been dithering about, do we go to the moon, do we go to Mars, do we go to it's not really sort of made its mind up, and that's created a window.
It has, exactly.
Of opportunity for someone to come along and go, we're going to put our flag down there.
So hopefully this pushes the US to kind of, I mean, all the delays, there's a lot, but hopefully I guess this pushes them forward.
Okay. So what is it my
it's
turn?
you again.
Right. Okay. So we were talking about engineers earlier, weren't we? About engineers as job, and interesting little news snippet here from the UK. Pilot has entered the top 10 most aspired to jobs for 13 to 16-year-olds in the UK. According to BBC Bite-sized survey, that was for the first time. Coming at number 10, engineer is second place.
Brilliant.
NHS was rated the most desirable organisation to work for. NASA was at number 4, which is a bit strange, really. But but that's the global soft power.
Exactly.
That's the global soft power we're still talking about. That's the Apollo effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still, down these years, and kids are going, I want to work for NASA. Even though they're British kids and they'd have to renounce British citizens. So I think that's very, very encouraging, the pilots in there. And maybe it's signs that some of the stuff that the RAS and similar organisations are doing in promoting aviation is bearing fruit.
Yeah.
So there,
I also think even considering that's a young, like the sample of that, they're young kids or teenagers, I guess. I think social media also plays a role in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have TikTok, but if you go on TikTok and if your algorithm knows what you like, you can see one video of saying someone, here's a day in the life of I'm a pilot, here's what I do. And that like gives people a sneak peek to something that they don't get to see, and it makes it look cool and something even attainable. I think bringing it down to someone's screen makes it look attainable and enjoyable and not kind of just this thing you see in movies. And so I think that definitely plays a role, and I think it's also encouraging to see the pilot being on the list is one thing, but the fact that list is dominated by also, I mean, NASA, as you mentioned, is not UK based, but NASA at least to do with space and aerospace, and then engineering, a big part of aerospace. That's 3 important things. They all go together. It's so encouraging to see.
Yes, good, isn't it?
Okay. What else? We got...
I'm going to bring this right back down to earth with a good old-fashioned general aviation story.
Hell surprise.
It's a UK story from the UK CAA. So they are making a change to the private pilot licence training syllabus now to include partial power flying. So we've always taught engine failure on takeoff. What do? You pick a field that's 30 degrees off the nose either side, pick a field, land straight ahead, don't turn back. there've been, over the last 10 years, there have been 16 accidents which the AEROSPACE investigation branch and the CAA have looked into, where the engine hasn't failed, but it's started to fail, so it's produced less power. And that, of course, creates confusion. You haven't got that immediate, the engine stopped, I've got to land. And people have tried to turn back. They've not made the field. They've maybe spun in off turn, something like that. So they're changing the syllabus now to teach people that, not particularly how to fly with low power, but the decision-making process that goes with it. That's really, really important. Yeah, we still see the turn back accidents so many times around the world, and if it's something we can try and ingrain into both ab initio training at PPL level, and the CAA are also recommending it, they're not mandated, they're recommending it. It goes into the biennial flight review as well, so that when pilots do their check flight, that it's something which instructors will perhaps emphasise. Hopefully they will.
Yeah.
And finally, back to you.
Finally, I'll just finish off with some, mostly good news. So the U.S. House of Representatives on the 8th of September passed the Mental Health in Aviation Act. If this is approved, once it goes up for the Senate and more further on, the legislation will make changes to how the FAA handles mental health issues to encourage pilots and air traffic controllers to seek help and disclose conditions or symptoms, and also require the FAA to expand, the list of available drugs to treat mental health conditions in pilots, and so on. I think this is a big deal because it's pretty well known that pilots have kind of kept things under wraps to avoid the repercussions that
you don't want to lose your license.
Absolutely. And I think this bill was sparked, or encouraged further with the Alaska Airlines incident that happened in 2023, where an off-duty pilot was arrested for trying to shut down their engines after not sleeping for over 40 hours and was on, I think, some sort of drugs. In fact, he actually pled guilty in court this month for that. So he was really struggling. And I think that kind of pushed this, to go ahead even quicker, because it's not just, mental health. It's actually, it can impact lives.
Absolutely.
More than just the pilot or the workers' lives. It can impact the passengers. It's a bigger deal.
We know there's always a stigma with talking about mental health, but within an industry like aviation, particularly on the flight deck, where it's predominantly alpha personalities, there's even less of an incentive to talk about how you're feeling. And I think you're right, this is a really, really important move. And looking at different medications that come through, different treatments, as you say, it can only be good news.
Sure.
It's, hopefully it's something that we see not just in the US, it goes around the world with a similar sort of approach to the matter.
Yeah.
Well, there's still, it was ground staff as well. There's a 2018 thing there with a ground worker, aircraft technician who commandeered.
The Q400, yes.
Q400, and took it up for a flight. And unfortunately,
we've seen with ground handlers with people sadly being ingested into engines as well, which it's an industry as a whole. So anything that we can do to promote mental health, mental well-being has got to be a benefit.
And that's something that the RAS is looking at on 6th of October. We have got our mental health awareness day, or there's a mental health awareness sort of seminar at RAS HQ. So definitely put that in your diary as well. So that's over and done with the news, and now over to another segment of podcast, Specialist Group Insight. So join us after the break.
Hello, I'm Tim Robinson. Welcome to another edition of a Specialist Group Insight, our segment on the NOTAM podcast, where we talk to the Royal Aeronautical Society specialist groups. And with me today is Chris Hunter, who is chair of the Flight Simulation Group Conference. Simulation Group Conference chair. Chris, welcome to Specialist Group Insight and the NOTAM podcast.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Now, you're on the show to talk about our very exciting event we've got coming up in October. But first, just tell us a little bit about the RES Flight Simulation Specialist Group. What does it do?
So we look at all aspects of flight simulation. We're one of the longest running specialist groups in terms of putting on conferences, going way back to 1970.
Wow.
First conference being held at the Society in the presence of Ed Link, the man who invented flight simulation and who our named lecturer is named after. He was there, and the Duke of Edinburgh was there. Those who remember the Duke, he was very keen on flying, used to like flying the 146 for the Royal Flight, as well as doing all kinds of other stuff and some more remarkable stuff when he was speaking about foreigners, perhaps. But anyway, he was a very good chap. He was there supporting us. In the group, we have members from industry who build flight simulators. We have members from regulations, CAA, etc. We have obviously operators, both military and civil, and we have academic groups. And it was primarily looking at initially flight simulation and working through to the level D full flight simulators that train the pilots that fly us all on holiday. And getting that regulation established through the 80s, expanding military simulation for all the network simulation was sort of the next phase. And now we're sort of in a phase where simulation has been applied nearly everywhere. We have digital twins, so the simulation for that. One of the topics to roll into the conference is that we're now looking at, or you're now looking at certifying aircraft by simulation.
Wow.
Rather than the other way around, where the aircraft would have a simulation model to predict how it would fly, but it had to fly to prove that was correct. The models have now got such a high pedigree that the models are being used to certify aircraft, which is quite a turnaround. And we have a session on that led by my colleague Stefan Goran from Saab on the second day of the conference. So I hope that's a quick overview.
Yeah, and I'm right in thinking also that the Society's flight simulation group has also been key in helping set the standards as an independent, neutral body for simulators all around the world.
Indeed, yeah. So way back to that work in the late 70s, early 80s, and through the 80s, there was the end result of that was a working group, international working group that then passed a document called, just colloquially called 9625, which is, as usual with these standards, you refer to them by the number. But it was for defining how simulators could be defined based on that definition, how you would have to test them, and what actual maneuvers you could do with them. So this was actually perhaps 20 years ago that some of this stuff was first done. And it is now coming back around to be applied because simulators, as you can appreciate, with newer technologies such as augmented reality, artificial intelligence, etc., they are moving away from the big box on legs to all these other hybrid and blended kind of training devices. And those really, when you're running a training center, you look at them and go, well, what training credit can I get? And under the older regulations, the answer was none. And you use those devices really to prepare people so that when they went in the big expensive box, they could more reliably and more quickly do the important training and pass and get themselves qualified to be on the aircraft. But they're now using that standard that we had, which is being reworked into an update by the ICAO and IARSA, who are incorporating these things, along with UKCA involved at both levels, into updated standards so that you can say, right, this is what my simulator looks like, and this is what I want to do with it. What tests do I have to do to prove it will do that? Rather than the full list prescriptive tests for a level D sim, where it would fail straight away because, oh, well, there's no motion. Well, I don't need motion because this is what I'm going to train. So it's a more intelligent approach. It's taken a while, but it is now coming into actual regulation and standards as an update where it's really going to be applied. And that's what our first session of the conference is about, regulation. And it's being delivered by some of the people who are chairing those working groups at ICAO, IARSA, etc., or certainly leading lights in those. We have presentations from FAA, IARSA, and CAE Boeing representatives who are on those committees, and several other people.
Yeah, so I popped into your flight simulation conference last year, and I think there was also something on there on the idea of certification of the devices themselves in aligning them with actual crewed aircraft, and you'd have a blanket approval rather than them doing kind of one by one. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was one of the proposed approaches from terrible, I can't recall his name, but a fairly senior guy at AERSA, and it was his idea of what the next step could be. I think that's a little bit early for in terms of practical
Yeah.
applications. And what we're finding is, and it's always with new regulations, most people are busy doing the day job. They're trying to design the new and sell the new simulator if they work in that part of the industry, and then picking up what's happening with the regulation, what is changing, and how they're going to have to prove this new wonderful device that they've been developing for 2 or 3 years. It can sometimes come to a bit of a challenge if you haven't kept in touch. And I think one of the big uses of our conference is it's a 2-day event where you can talk directly to the people who are putting these regulations together and the people who are going to be applying them from FAA, CA when they come to approve your new training device. We have this year decided not just to do a session on regulation, but to do a session on how new regulation is being applied to these new devices. Rather clever title that my colleague Alison Kugel from the Netherlands, who's chairing that session, cleared for takeoff, we're calling it. So cleared for takeoff, innovation meets regulation.
Okay.
And in there, we've got people from Loft Dynamics, from various institutes who've got new simulators that they're working on, from Leonardo, Alaska Airlines, and some various consultants from Australia and the UK who've been looking at these new devices, and they're going to give examples, real-world examples of how regulation's been applied, or in some cases, how they think it could be applied to the things that are coming.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. So, just as a reminder, where and when is it happening?
So it's in London. It's our headquarters at 4 Hamilton Place, and it's on the 21st and 22nd of October. So as we record, it's just over 3 weeks away.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So one for the diary anyway. So, the new technologies that involves things like VR, mixed reality, AI maybe powered ATC. I mean, that's a very exciting thing to discuss as to. I mean, you just think about as someone who has a VR headset at home for flight simulation, it's just incredible. But presumably then the thing is what can you get credit for this? How is it useful, etc. I know a few years ago people were sort of saying about well, it's great, but I can't write on a notepad on my a kneeboard or whatever, or and for that I suppose you need mixed reality.
Yeah, mixed or augmented reality, where you're looking at the real world via a camera, where you can overlay virtual images and information. We've got a couple of applications of that. We've got Director of Flight Ops from Alaska Airlines, Nigel Sargent, is talking about how they're expanding the capabilities of their low-level devices, the ones I was referring to earlier, using XR, extended reality. I mean, there's almost every letter in the alphabet you can put in front of an R for the realities these days. But it's talking about broadening access to the simulators, cutting costs and reshaping their training pathways. The other elements that we're looking at, artificial intelligence, referred to being applied to air traffic control. So there's been a long and slow and steady push to increase the fidelity of air traffic simulation, because even today on the best simulators, what you'll often find, and certainly going back 5, 10, 20 years, it was just quiet in terms of air traffic. If you stick a headset on yourself, sat on a jump seat, trying to get out of Heathrow, you wonder how on earth they ever get in to talk and get permission to push back off the ramp. It is so busy on that air traffic headset. You've got to be on the right frequency, switching at the right time. Now, all the frequencies and things were simulated, but the instructor, who was also trying to instruct and make sure people were doing what's supposed to be doing and picking up when they're making small errors, was also having to role play all the different air traffic controls and set the different frequencies, etc., etc. And so by default, although there were a few recorded, essentially just recordings that were played in the background to create some if you like, air traffic clutter, they weren't realistic. Now, what has been developed over the last few years by a number of companies, but leading amongst them is ASTI from the States, is called SARTSI. So it's Simulated Air Traffic Control Environment. And this really is actually giving you proper recorded, proper auto-generated air traffic control messages passing between the controller and the other simulated aircraft. So if we're sat on the stand and we're waiting for the aircraft to push back next to us, and that's what you can look out the window and see it. Now with their system, you can actually hear them requesting to push back, the fact that they're pushed back, or asking to be held so that we can push back. So it's so much more immersive and so much more realistic. And on the approach, you've got people encroaching on the runway, people in the circuit with you. All that traffic is there, and if we change route, it adapts correctly to it.
Oh,
So it
wow.
is using intelligence to work
Yeah,
that
yeah.
out. Now, it's been a long way coming. There's a lot of people saying we should have been doing this for years, which I also one of the people who agree with that. But it's the way of the world. Until you get it in regulation, if people can get away without building it, the tendency is, with a cost-driven world, that you will not build it in there. It is coming into regulation now. There's still a little bit of debate about how strongly. It's been in there as a recommendation or an alternative for quite a while. But our evening lecture at the end of the first day, named after Ed Link, the founder of flight simulation back in the 30s, is being delivered by a couple of senior people from ASTI, Neil Waterman and
Oh,
Jeremy
right.
Goodman. And they will be talking about this journey of air traffic control. So they give the background to what has been the standard for simulators, as in not very much air traffic, how they developed their product, and how it's being applied now on various airlines around the world and training programs, as well as the military, of course, but also how regulation is coming, and certainly how they hope it is going to come to be applied in the very, very near future.
And one of the things that obviously you said about is 9625.
9625, yeah.
Now, how far away is that? And would you say that this conference is a key kind of venue to kind of provide input, learn about it, and kind of have your say and find out what's going on if it's going to be the next big thing?
Well, so 9625 has been around since I think 2005.
Okay.
But it was a standard that you could use, but it wasn't the standard that you had to use.
Right.
It is now, and the methodology of it, what is it you want to train? What equipment you can have on it? How do I prove it? Is being adopted into standards by AEROSPACE. That standard is out for review. It's always very hard to say exactly, but I think there was a date this year that it might be coming out, but it might be early next year. But certainly, if you're building a simulator now to get qualified next year or in the next couple of years, it's very likely that that's the standard that you will be able to apply. You'll still be able to do the old-fashioned, it's a full level D, here's all the tests, we just do it, or level 7, I think it was in 9625. So yes, have you got an opportunity to contribute? That has gone out, that came out last year for people to contribute. It's still possible to give some feedback, but I think they are more at the stage now of making very, very minor changes. And I think it's certainly too late to make any major changes. But in terms of finding out what's coming, the best place to be, if you're not already on the committee and been contributing to it, is our conference on the 21st, 22nd, because the people from those committees and the people who are going to apply the standards from AEROSPACE, CAA, FAA are all going to be there.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things is sort of in keeping an eye on new technology and particularly on augmented reality. Augmented reality and sort of simulation is also making its way onto actual aircraft. I mean, we've got the sort of the synthetic radars and stuff that are being used on training aircraft for the military and things like that. But augmented reality in what Red 6 are doing in making a virtual reality headset that is projecting virtual aircraft and 3D objects into the pilot's field of vision while they're in the air, and then you can kind of link it, I suppose, with simulators on the ground and things like that. So it's a very exciting era at the moment.
It is, yeah. And to be honest, though, the simulation in that is not very difficult, because all you're doing is creating a tiny holographic picture, if you like, of a tanker or whatever it is that you want to try, or a wingman. The real clever technology there is getting that to be completely synchronized in position out in the real world on a headset in a live, harsh environment compared to the nice computer rooms that our stuff normally runs in, and making it such that it is totally believable, the pilot depth perception on the headset, and an image that actually keeps up with your head when you move your head around. Those have been the challenges for headsets over the previous years, and the resolution, of course, and they are getting there. And yeah, I've seen Red 6, it's very impressive. They won't be there, but we will have presentations on the new 6th generation fighter from Dr. Mark Stevenson. He's the technical lead from DSTL for test and evaluation on FCAS. He will be talking about how they're using simulation to speed up development and delivery on that aircraft. And that's part of a session that I referred to earlier. I called him Stefan earlier. I apologise. It's Goran Anka from Saab. they're talking about accelerating aircraft development by simulation. There has been a working group called G35, or the subcommittees, and they have issued a standard quite recently. Anthony Hunt from Boeing, who we've been talking to in the preparation for this conference, just recently received the EdLink Award at FSEMC for his services to simulation. And this new standard, Goran is going to be explaining what's in that standard and how it is being applied or can be applied. And then we have some examples of application, use of modeling, for instance, for ship integration for helicopters. Mark White from Liverpool University, along with Leonardo's John Goodby, will be talking about how they've used modeling there to actually certify helicopters to fly on ships by use of simulation. Similar certification efforts from Saab as well going on in there.
Yeah, I think it's also worth explaining to listeners is that it's not just the flight simulation, the flight simulation that people sort of say, or flight simulation, but it's also the digital modeling and also things like maintenance training. Simulators now evolved for teaching people how to fix aircraft on the ground. It's not just the pilot task, is it?
No, so we have a presentation from Rheinmetall, from Jürgen Uthman, and they're talking about maintenance training, combining training rigs with augmented reality. So you've got your hands on the actual kit with a electronic spanner or screwdriver, whatever, more likely pulling a connector, looking at data, but then that's been enhanced by the augmented reality headset. And you can do great things with maintenance training, like pulling up the checklists or pulling up the instruction that you're supposed to be following. And you can tailor that amount of instruction and the pace of it based on how well the student is doing, or whether he's a new ab initio student, or someone who's on a recurrent check, or someone who's perhaps just struggling a little bit with the course, or someone who's finding it too easy because they're quickly going through things. The dynamic aspect of the instruction, the little bit of intelligence, if you like, that's in there, is enabled to deliver the training as the student needs it, and then record that information, and then maybe say, right, next time we're going to start the training at a slightly higher level for them, because this guy's coping, or this guy's struggling a bit on that course. He doesn't need to do it again, but let's run a bit slower, make sure he really did learn what we hoped he was supposed to learn from the previous session. Yeah, so there's that there. And you talk about simulation in many, many areas. We have a session, it's almost as if you've been reading the program, Tim, on applications of simulation that my colleague from the Flight Sim Group, John Cook, is chairing. And in there, we have a presentation from BAE Systems about how they're using simulation to look at what's called turbulation, which is what you probably think it is, which is difficulty of working in a turbulent environment in an airplane using a large screen. Modern cockpits, and certainly FCAS and the aircraft that are being looked at, or the systems looked at, are needing to address, as you can imagine, if you're trying to touch a touch screen and your finger is bouncing around. We have this on simulators on motion. We actually have instructors grasping the side of the instructor station so that their finger hits the right button and they don't put the wrong malfunction in or freeze the simulator when they didn't mean to. It is an issue. How do you use a touch screen in a bouncing environment? And that is one of the studies that Chris Friel from BAE Systems has been doing, looking at using a motion simulator to test out the simulation of a system, which is a touchscreen that's going to go into an advanced fighter aircraft. In that session also, we're very lucky to have Dr. Craig Brown from Brown Sim, who has been working in flight simulation for quite a while. More recently, the last, I can't remember how many years, but a number of years now, he's been applying what he learned about motion queuing in Formula One. Working with some of the big teams such as McLaren, I believe. And he thinks there are some lessons for us to learn on how he has driven motion queuing. Obviously, a very different environment. You have a lot of acceleration, obviously, which we're not too bad at on flight simulators. But lateral movement is quite a big issue, and it's quite difficult to do correctly. That big swing you get if you're sat at the front of an airplane as you turn onto the runway, etc., or yawing when you lose an engine, perhaps more critically in training. And some ideas that he's learned there from how to do motion queuing in Formula One. And of course, most of the people in the room were very keen to hear about what he's actually done in Formula One as well, because I'm sure that will be fascinating. But that's part of the applications of simulation session as well.
Well, I mean, motion queuing. I mean, as a fan of PC flight simulation and VR, there's some incredible. I mean, obviously, you're probably well aware of people like home cockpits and 737s, and they built there in the garage and things like that. But there's some incredible people there who built their own like, you know, motion rigs at home. I don't think I've got the space or the finances to do it, but you know, it's just incredible to see that now that the technology has, you know, come down where it's possible for somebody to do that and have it there in their spare room and you know, given enough you know, space and finance and what have you, you know. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so very exciting. We're getting update there on GCAP. There's going to be something on GCAP, future fighters, how it's supporting there. The other emerging area is advanced air mobility, isn't it? And sort of, you know, eVTOL simulators. So and we've got there something there on novel framework for VTOL capable flight training device standards. So presumably that will include advanced air mobility.
It does, yeah. We're lucky enough to have Eric Bird from Texas A&M University. He's coming over talking about some work that they've been doing on bridging the gap on certification standards for flight simulators for these advanced air mobility vehicles. The companies that are building those have been using simulation, obviously, a lot to get to where they've got to. There's various mixes of them, some still to fly, some early flight testing, some quite late flight testing. Simulation has been used in those. We've had sessions in the past on those areas. The feeling this year was, because we each year we look at what we're going to do in the conference. There's always seems to be a place for regulation because it is so key to simulation. It is what is allowed, and it still blows my mind now, zero flight time, which was achieved in the 80s. And if you don't know what it is, some of our listeners maybe don't, it means that you and I can go on holiday, and the guy who sat in the first officer's seat on our little EasyJet or British Airways plane that's taken us on holiday has never been on that aeroplane before. He does not need to have been. He may well have been, obviously, but legally he can train for all of that on the simulator. And the first time he goes on the real airplane, he's fully qualified to take us on holiday as the co-pilot, not the main pilot, but as the co-pilot. Now, a lot of airlines do like them to do refresher flights, etc., but legally they don't have to because the simulation is so good and so in depth. Now, it's achieved that by having this very rigid standard, which is why it's been quite difficult, because it's been the industry's been very reluctant to qualify low-level devices to allow people to say, yes, you can now don't have to do this on the airplane because you did it on my big simulator. That's fine, because you did it with a headset with a unproven technology, with stuff that the regulator maybe doesn't understand or doesn't know how to qualify. That's been an issue. That's what we're addressing, and that's why we're focusing on the regulatory side of things now. And those new regulations are, and not just have more than one eye on advanced air mobility vehicles and the types of simulators that they're having, and also the different systems that they're having to operate, the different way that they fly, etc. So regulation, yeah, we're looking at that this year there. Not so much on the simulation, we've focused on that in the past, but this year we thought we'd look at regulation. People are actually applying regulation now, and a little bit about future, as you referenced Eric Bird's presentation, as well as the other applications that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, and just to clarify for our listeners as well, Chris, when you were talking about a pilot, he or she never having flown in the airplane before, you were talking about, like, you know, a 787 or an A350, the airliner, not having never stepped in any kind of light aircraft, because there's the issue.
There's a whole training path they go through through their PPL, and it's not like they've never been off the ground before. So it is a type conversion. So you know, overstating it to catch the attention. But if, for instance, I don't know, you've flown on 737s and you've been a captain on those, or maybe done quite well, and you're retraining for 74, more like 78, 77 these days. The first time you go on that new type, you're going in the co-pilot seat. You don't have to have been up in that plane before. You've trained it all on the simulator.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we're coming to sort of like the sort of end of this sort of segment now. Top things you're looking forward to at the conference?
It's a lot of work. It being over is probably not the answer you wanted to hear. No, what I'm really looking forward to, the Formula One stuff. Yeah, that's always going to be fun. Some of the applications of AI, particularly, I think the lecture in the evening from ASTI, pulling together all the work that those guys in that industry have been doing for the last 10 or 15 years, and how it is nearly there. We allow people in EdLink, and we encourage them to be controversial. And so I'm looking forward to them, airing a bit of slight, perhaps dirty laundry in public about how and why it's been so difficult to get where they are. Because if you don't actually challenge and say, we didn't do this well enough, you don't get better. And I don't think we have been quick enough at adopting SATSI, Simulated Air Traffic Control, so many acronyms around. I'm particularly looking forward to that. But the whole thing really, I mean, you look at AI, fascinating stuff that's been done. Talos got some studies on that I haven't mentioned. They'll be upset about that for me. Looking at how metrics-based stuff is done in evidence-based training. It's a really good conference. I mean, it's a conference I would pay to go to if I wasn't having to go there to run it. It looks really good. I'm very, very pleased with the overall program.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that is one for the diaries, people. So set, if you're interested in flight simulation, training, maintenance, GCAP as well. 21st, 22nd of October, London and online. Be there or be square, as they say. Final question to you, Chris. So, as you probably gathered, I'm a big fan of the home flight simulator stuff. How far away in terms of fidelity are you? Do you think now we are with the home stuff compared to professional gear?
Still a way off. It's those critical high maneuvers, and basically you're never going to have the same flight control system.
Yeah.
You are very unlikely to have that physical environment that you're sat in with all the physical panels.
Yeah.
You're reaching out to touch, and the motion as well. Little bouncing the seat around is fine, but that seat of the pants, when you lose an engine, everything needs to all actually come together in the right order and very quickly in terms of latency between onset of cues, visual, etc. The one thing I would say is the visuals generally are better on your home flight simulators than they are on the big civil and military ones. So there's a plus. But in terms of depth of modeling, not quite, because they don't have access to the same data in terms of aerodynamics. And in terms of physical feel, haptics, etc., you'd be spending a fortune on the real kit. They're very good. I would use them if I didn't get to play with the real things. Having got to play with the real things and coming back to the home sims, it's kind of like, I spent all day doing this on something slightly better, so I'm not going to do that at home. Thank you.
Brilliant. All right. Well, on that note, I will leave it at that. Chris, so thanks so much for giving us coming on the show and telling us all about this fantastic conference that's going to be happening in October. If you want to go and book, it's on aerosociety.com and navigate yourself over to Aerosociety events. It's on our rolling online diary. There is a full program there. You can check it all out. It's going to be a really exciting couple of days there. Can't wait. And get signed up and get booked. Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you, Tim. I hope to see you at the conference.
Thank you.
Welcome back. So that was the news, and now we're going to turn on our eyes to what features have we got in the October 2025 issue. So I'll start.
Yeah, you start.
We've got the report there from DSCI. We've chatted about that, but bumper report there, squeezed it into the magazine, and lots of good news from DSCI.
I mean, one of the things that I thought the DSCI thought was really interesting was there was a Japanese company with a cardboard drone, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Well, you said earlier lots of drone and anti-drone technology at DSCI, but that one particularly stuck in my eye.
Well, that's about as low cost as you can possibly get.
Yes, and biodegradable as well.
Biodegradable as well. What about you, Steve? What have you?
Well, I wrote an article for this issue of the magazine, which we've called "Still No Frills," and it's looking at the low-cost carrier market. So, this year has seen both Ryanair marking its 40th anniversary and EasyJet marking its 30th anniversary. So, what I wanted to look back at was how low-cost carriers have impacted the market and also what the future holds for them. And I was looking to speak to Dec Ryan of Ryanair fame. He's recently written his book Air Dogs and got some good insight from Dec on where he thinks the future is going with low-cost carriers. So we talked about there are a number of low-cost carriers like Indigo are looking now at the long-haul market. And Dec said he sees very little potential in that market. In his words, all it takes is the big boys, the British Airways, the United, the Deltas of this world to put 40 seats down the back at a cheap price, and you've undercut the business model. But we've seen huge growth in Europe. We've seen in recent months, Spirit in the US have filed for Chapter 11 twice this year. So mixed fortunes depending on business cases, business models. I think what's happened with Spirit is a lot of the big operators in the US have tried in a way to copy their business model by offering basic tickets. Actually, we've touched on in the article the business case of the add-on. So you've got a cheap fare, but then you pay for your bag, you pay for your priority boarding, you pay for this and that on top. There's actually some statistics which were from McKinsey, and anyone, I guess, what's the average cost in a European low-cost carrier? If you want to put your bag in the hold, what do we reckon the average cost is now?
€50.
70.
£37. So not as expensive as people think.
We went a bit.
Yeah. Cabin bag 28. So you see, it all starts to add up, and that's where this business model looks at. But let's say McKinsey done extensive research. They're looking at the market growing 16% year on year, and last year alone it was worth £317 billion worldwide low-cost carriers.
I think it's difficult to underestimate the impact that Ryanair, EasyJet have had on the European, just European tourism travel,
definitely,
sort of as a whole. In that, sort of like suddenly weekends in Vilnius, or we're going off to Casablanca and stuff like that. That has just absolutely reshaped European tourism.
It has.
And how easy it is, how cheap it is, to the extent where some of it doesn't seem to make any sense. It's like, oh well, I can go to I can go to Tunisia that's for a flight, and it's cheaper than going on the train from London to Bristol. Something like that, which doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever in some respects. And I think also that are they hitting their limits? Is the sort of saturation of the market, and I think this is why some of these airlines are so interested in things like the A321 XLR, because that pushes you out on the range, and then you can go far further. You can pick up these sort of untapped markets. But having said that, we're back to sort of like the thing about that Tony says about, well, as soon as you start going long haul, the utilization goes down, and all you need is a legacy carrier going on and add a few more seats.
Subsidized seats down the back.
But really interesting.
But you're right, it opens up other markets as well. Deck Ryan was saying, South America. His company had stakes in lots of South American low-cost carriers for a while. And he said when they first started, I think 3% of people in most countries in South America had flown in an aeroplane at all. And by bringing these €50 flights or $50 flights, it just enabled more and more people. And we look at that with India and China as well, with growing economies there and low-cost carriers. I think there's huge scope for growth there.
Okay. What have you spotted in this issue then, Bella?
Yeah. So Alan Dron did a really great kind of look at all of the biggest kind of airports in the UK and not the UK, in England.
London,
yeah.
London airports.
Yeah, London airports. And basically just did, I guess, an update on what's been happening, and there's been a lot of growth, which it hasn't been like this in quite a long time. And so he looks at Heathrow's third runway, Gatwick's plans to potentially upgrade the existing Northern Taxiway, so on and so forth. I won't give too much information. You should definitely read the article. But it's really good, and kind of it shows a lot of promise with some of the big airports or even small ones in London, and how much growth there is, and especially coming so far from COVID.
And in typical press week fashion, the news has changed over the weekend, hasn't it? So we're recording this on Monday morning.
Sure.
And over the weekend, it was announced Sunday that Gatwick has got permission for its second runway. So the Northern Taxiway, they're going to move, I think, 11 metres to the north, which will enable single-aisle aircraft to operate from it. And I think it was 100,000 sorties a year extra, enabled by just increasing that runway capacity. And I
Yeah.
think the government described it as "quote unquote" a no-brainer.
So good time to put out the airport news is Sunday evening.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. What about you? You've got another one?
Me?
Yeah.
I've got Protolabs. So this is the third year that we, the Royal Aeronautical Society being we, have teamed up with Protolabs to do a survey on aerospace manufacturing trends. So we've been able now to build on that and look at how those stats have changed over the course of 3 years. And without going much away, because again, this will be online eventually, there's a definite shift towards scaling up for defence compared to the previous 2 years. Previous surveys, there's been lots of talk of supply chain restraint, bouncing back from COVID. The numbers seem to indicate those days are over, and the focus now really is on gearing up for defence. The key priority, previously our key priority has been to build quality, if you asked people. The key priority this year for the people that answered our survey was to design and deliver quickly. That went up from 36% last time to 55% of respondents this time around. So we've got to deliver, scale up for defence, deliver it quickly, and design it quickly.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing that came out, a big increase in digital printing, AI, 3D printing, that sort of thing is growing in prominence.
Well, not the digital printing bit, but that leads nicely into another article we've got in this issue on sort of deja vu. There's nothing new in aerospace and defence. So this is an article on how in World War II the US was faced with early stages of the war in the Pacific, and they were looking at swarms of drones, building swarms of cheap drones to fight the Japanese.
Yep.
At that point, the US industry hadn't geared up properly. They were worried about Japan was on a roll. They were about the invasion of Hawaii, Australia, and they were looking at cheap manufactured drones that were controlled via TV,
Yep.
a new technology, and these were remote controlled aircraft.
Mm.
And while we've got a historical article in this, is because it comes right back to the present day, when the US is looking at the similar sort of idea to try and contain China.
Yep.
Project Replicator now, but again, it's cheap drones, attritable. Can we use them to counter China in the event of an invasion of Taiwan? Turn it into hellscape.
Yeah.
And literally, it's like the same, almost the same sort of even the US plan for this in World War II, Project Option, and that's Project Replicator. And you're like, well, okay, there's a fairly nondescript sort of code words,
and there's he said there's a lot of synergy. He said Project Option, the two aircraft were made from non-critical components, so they were wood. Yeah. They were built by cottage industries. Yeah. I think the interstate aircraft was built by a company that made jukeboxes and machines like that. So again, looking at how we've seen drones in Ukraine being built in people's front rooms, really, haven't we? So,
okay. What about you?
Yeah, Naomi Allen, our head of research at RES, attended the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Aviation Forum in July, and basically does a great summary of the event. Interestingly, one thing I thought was really interesting is that she said the word sustainability was actually not as big of a topic of conversation at the event, and there seems to be a shift of focus more on efficiency rather than specifically sustainability. I don't think that's the whole industry, but at least at this event. So yeah, it's a great article just kind of summarizing the event. The keynote speaker, there's a lot of focus on AI. Inevitably, talking about what the future could look like by 2050, where AI plays a role in basically every aspect of flight. One interesting thing that she talks about in the article is a part of the event where they kind of busted some myths about AI and what that will kind of look like within aerospace, such as, AI and autonomy are the same, or AI will directly control the aircraft, which I thought is a good one, because I think as soon as you think of AI and aviation, I think people who probably aren't in the industry immediately go, oh, okay, so we're having just AI controlled my flight to Australia. And yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, it's a great summary of the event.
Excellent. Okay.
I've got an article that was written by our outgoing features editor, Jack Richardson. So Jack was maternity cover while Bella was away. Jack's final article for us was called Sink or Skim, and looks at winging ground effect vehicles. So you may be familiar with the Russian Ekranoplan Ekranoplan word of the day. Been definitely word of the day in the office for the last couple of weeks. I think we do love an Ekranoplan. So obviously that was developed to skim over the top of the water, flies within the ground effect. So very, very low, very, very fast. So you've got the combination of the benefits of a boat and an aeroplane. Never really caught on as an idea, but has the time now come is the question that Jack has asked. And there are a number of organisations now looking at developing WIGs, so wing and ground effect vehicles, perhaps most notably Regent in the US with their Sea Glider, their Viceroy Sea Glider, which is a 12-seat airliner, which flies on a hydrofoil. So it's got a hydrofoil. They've done testing of that on the hydrofoil now. There's also ST Engineering in Singapore who've teamed up with Widget Works to create the Airfish. And Jack did an interview with, some of you may know Dan Griffith, well-known British test pilot. Dan has been test flying, test sailing, test driving this winging ground effect, the Airfish, out in Singapore. So we actually got some context from Dan as to what it's like to actually work on these machines and some of the problems. And as Dan said, they've had to rewrite but the manual, because there is no skill in doing this at all. There's other UK organisations, there's Selby Piper, who are working on both a kit plane version and also one for delivering cargo to remote islands. And Speeder System, who first saw Speeder out at Paris in 2023. And they've got a relatively small vehicle, which is going to be used for delivering supplies to oil rigs. But this is an interest because it's a combination of a winging ground effect and an eVTOL. So it skims over the top of the water till it gets to the oil rig, and then it can hover using VTOL to actually offload and load the supplies that it needs to. And then Jack actually looks at the defence implications of that as well. So we've seen with China the Bohai Sea Monster in recent months as sort of broken cover, but lots of other organisations that are developing and seeing a development for wing and ground effect for military purposes.
Regent are pushing that.
Regent are really pushing that with both the Viceroy itself as both a crewed and uncrewed version, but also their initial testing was done with a 25% scale radio control version. They're now looking at militarizing that and using that for electronic warfare, ASR, that kind of thing. There's also Turkish and Polish companies that Jack talks about. And I think, again, we go back to AI. The technology has developed now where, back in the 60s and 70s, you had to fly this thing over the top of the water very precisely in ground effect. We've now got AI, machine learning algorithms that can perfect this and take that skill away from the crew. To give you that optimum performance.
But also for defence applications, you look at what Ukraine has been doing with USVs, unmanned, uncrewed surface vessels, high-speed speedboats, essentially high-speed speedboats, but you mount, sort of air-to-air missiles on them, and all of a sudden you got to, or you ram them into side of ships. You think of a wing and ground effect.
Yep,
that's even more difficult.
You're never going to see it coming, are you?
It's somewhere between a missile and a boat. So yeah, interesting thing to keep an eye on. Finally, we've got another space feature, haven't we, Bella? That's up your street.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, and not necessarily good news, but regular contributor Teresa Poltarova did an article on the UK Space Agency, which will now cease to exist as an independent body in 2026. So this article is really, really good, basically talking about what kind of went into it, at least from what we can know, and how the UK Space Agency has now absorbed into the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. I'm not going to say too much information because she spoke with quite a few insiders that give some really good information, and I think it's definitely worth the read.
And by the time this podcast goes out, that'll actually be on our Insight blog as well to view. So you can read that firsthand again, whether you're a member or not, through our Aerospace NOTAM Insight blog.
Definitely.
So a really topical and interesting article from Teresa, I thought.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. And obviously, in this issue, we've got the usual afterburner. What's in that, Steve? The usual diaries.
There's the usual diaries and a big update on books that have joined the e-library, and a really, really special feature on members who celebrate 50 years with us this year. So a big list of long members who've been with us for half a century.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's what's in the October issue. Please do send us your branch news, your news of events reports, lecture write-ups, photos, etc. to Deputy Editor Stephen Bridgewater on stephen.bridgewater@aerosociety.com. So what have we got coming up in upcoming events and things that are happening? Well, we've got, as mentioned previously, we have the RES Mental Health in Aerospace Awareness event. That's 6th of October. We've got the President's Conference 7th to 8th of October.
Yep.
That's going to be all about recruitment, retention,
People in
STEM,
aerospace.
People in aerospace, and like we say, we're from the kind of pilots making it into the sort of top 10 of most aspired to careers. That is definitely one to watch. RES Flight Simulation Conference, all you wanted to know about flight simulation, 21st to 22nd of October. Careers in Aerospace Live, the most popular, 5th of November, the most popular sort of kind of careers event dedicated essentially to, especially to aviation, aerospace, space flight. Every time we run this now, we're like, oh, cool, we need a bigger building.
Yeah.
It's packed out. There's queues. If you check our social media, there's queues around the block for people to get
quite literally, I may add.
So mark your diaries for that. We've got the RES Light Aircraft Design Conference, 10th of November. That's always a good one to see what's happening there, along with the winners of the RES sort of like light aircraft design competition.
Yep.
We've got RES Rotorcraft Conference that's popped up, 11th of November. A lot of stuff happening in Rotorcraft at the moment, apart from new medium helicopter. No, that's an in-joke for anybody. We've got the Dubai Air Show, 17th to 21st November. So myself and Steve will be out there looking for all the news. If you're out there, if you're a corporate partner, if you're a member, a fellow, and you're going out there, do let us know. We'd love to see you there. And then we've got the RES Medicine Group Annual Symposium on 24th of November, which will keep us active. So that's what's happening in the next couple of months.
It's a busy couple of months again, isn't it? And then it'll be Christmas. Then it'll be Christmas.
Yeah.
We do, but look, I mean, that October, November is the run up to Christmas.
And then, so finally, we're going into the last little bit. What have we been watching, reading, playing? Who wants to go first?
Do you want to go first? Go on.
Yeah,
Editor-in-Chief's privilege.
So, editor's privilege. So, I was over at We Have Waste Fest. I didn't mention this in the Where Have I Been. Really interesting. World War II it's like Glastonbury with tanks. World War II festival with Al Murray and James Holland. 3 days of lectures and things going on there. Some very interesting stuff on the firebombing of Tokyo. Lots of interesting to get teeth into and think about. But one of the sort of most interesting lectures there, War in the Smartphone Age by Matthew Ford. And he was doing this presentation on how the phrase was participatory warfare, and that you can now publish, contribute. There's even almost like target selection via smartphone, and the public can now kind of influence how wars are fought. They're part of the information sphere, and you can now. And one of the things he said was, and unfortunately, we couldn't really do it because the where it was in the middle of a field and the connectivity wasn't too great. But there's a thing called, I think, signarocket.com. And you can go on to a website and pay to put a message on a Ukrainian bomb or grenade or something that is then dropped on Russian forces. And you can craft your own message. And to some extent, this isn't new. You've had ground crew scrawling things on bombs in the Second World War, Korean War, Vietnam War, Gulf War even maybe. but for to allow the public to do it,
Yeah.
so there's all this sort of stuff there, and you know, and you know, your smartphone is an intelligence thing.
Mhm.
You know, it's an intelligence thing for both good and bad. You know, you could be reporting an enemy column, you know, if your thing has been invaded, but people could also be using your geolocation data to work out, all right, okay, well, people are, you know, you're in the military, you've been running around this pattern, you know, around there on Strava or a jogging app, or you're on Tinder or something. That's where you're located.
Yeah.
That's where a military base is.
Yeah.
So absolutely fascinating. So I'm just getting into his book now, War in the Smartphone Age. Really good.
I've been reading, I actually had it as an audio book this occasion, a book called Host by Russ Capasso. Really interesting book. It's about an aerospace journalist who stumbles across a hijacked satellite. So this is somebody who writes for an aerospace magazine, not our aerospace magazine, it's purely fictional.
Okay.
And while clearing out his father's effects, finds record of a FRB fast burst from a satellite. It then evolves into a cloak and dagger exercise with NASA, with the FBI, with the company which owns the satellite. And when it gets to the end of the book, knowing who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. So he enlists the help of a hacker who's on the run from the FBI. Really, it's a fun book. And you get to the very last page without really knowing where this burst is coming from and who has hijacked it. So
is there lots of about an aerospace journey? Is there lots of cliffhangers about sort of sharing files?
Yeah, Adobe keeps crashing. Yeah, all of that sort of thing.
The laptops keep rebooting at the wrong moment.
People keep making last-minute changes to articles that they send in. It's a very dramatic book. So that's Host by Russ Capasso, and I would highly recommend it.
Okay, what about you, Bella?
Well, I have not been able to consume as much this year, just trying to keep a child alive. But I did, in my minimal reading this year, got to read Orbital by Samantha Harvey. It's a very, very short book, which is why I was able to read it. It was interesting. My review, I wouldn't say it was the most amazing book, but it was really interesting. I don't know if they can go hand in hand. I think they can. It's basically told over the course of like 24 hours, and it follows astronauts and cosmonauts on the ISS. And each like chapter covers a single like 90-minute orbit around Earth. And it's basically kind of an introspective book about like the meaning of life, and it is a lot of existential conversations between the astronauts, and it's all spoken about while they're all like dealing with real life things, but they're literally orbiting around Earth.
And this won the Booker Prize, didn't it?
It did win the Booker Prize. It's really well done. I would say like all of the, I guess, the details, from my knowledge, obviously I'm not an astronaut, from my knowledge, it was pretty well done. Apparently, the author, she said to understand like the inner workings of the ISS, she would have the constant stream of the ISS on in the background all day, every day, just like watching it, like really learning every bit about it. And I think she, I'm no complete expert, but she did a pretty good job. I felt like I was reading something that was really correct. But it was really interesting. I would say it's definitely, I think it would bore me if I wasn't interested in like space.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would not recommend this to like my friend who's in a completely different career.
Okay.
But, our listeners, I'm sure many are interested in space, so I think it's good. But it's,
since Bella started with us a couple of years ago, we've been giving you regular tips on books and on particularly movies that we think you should watch. So, and now that you are a new mum, and obviously you can tell from Bella's accent she didn't grow up here in the UK, so I don't know whether you had this in Australia. Button Moon. You need to, so Button Moon, rocket going to space, Button Moon, you need to introduce the...
Wait, what is that?
It is a cartoon. You'll find it on YouTube, I'm sure. It was something that I grew up with. So for little one, I think Button Moon is something you need to investigate for the next...
clangers.
And the clangers, I think, Tim, you and I are a bit old for the clangers, a bit young for the clangers, aren't we? But the clangers
They're
is...
both documentaries.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Feedback next month. Let us know what you think about Button
Okay,
Moon.
sounds good.
Okay, so that is wrapping up now. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's good to get Bella back in the on the podcast. So we're going to ask, where can people keep up with the RAS and the magazines? Obviously, that's www.aerosociety.com. I'm still on X at RAS Tim R. Steve,
I'm mostly on Facebook and on LinkedIn as Stephen Bridgewater, and Stephen is with a PH and Bridgewater's got an E in the middle.
And Bella, where can we find you?
I'm on X, RAS Bella O.
Okay, so look out for us there. Questions, feedback, comments, do get in touch. Do let us know what you think of this. Suggestions, send us all your way. We're always interested in feedback and questions, responses. Reminder, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. And tell your friends. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up to like, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys. See you next month.
See you next month.